The sky over Earth was a quiet one, undisturbed and peaceful. People were going about their day-to-day lives, commuting to work, children playing in parks, and families gathering for meals. No one could have imagined that just beyond Earth's atmosphere, something dark and terrible was unfolding. A fleet of alien ships, sleek and silent, slipped into orbit above Earth, their dark shapes almost invisible against the backdrop of space. They were advanced beyond anything humanity could comprehend, yet they were as silent as the void itself. The invaders had come. They had waited for this moment, and they knew exactly what they were doing. The first sign of the invasion was almost too small to notice. A subtle ripple in the satellite feed, a brief moment of static, so brief that no one thought much of it. But to the alien commanders aboard their ships, it was the signal they had been waiting for. The invasion had begun. They moved quickly, but quietly. Their ships descended from the skies without a sound, landing on Earth's surface in places where they were least expected. Cities fell first, but they fell in silence. There was no warning, no explosion, no crashing sound of metal against Earth, just the quiet hum of their ships as they touched down. Humanity was caught off guard. No one expected it, not in a million years. The idea of an invasion from another world seemed impossible to most. The alien ships were so advanced that they almost seemed to shimmer out of existence. They could phase in and out of view, moving through the air as though they were ghosts. They were too fast, too smart, and too powerful. They seemed to have everything under control. At first, there was nothing humanity could do to stop them. The aliens quickly took control of key infrastructure, military bases, power stations, communications hubs. They moved like shadows, taking everything they needed without leaving any trace of their presence. They had studied Earth, they knew its weaknesses, and they exploited them to their advantage. No resistance could be organized quickly enough to stop them. There was no plan, no strategy in place. Humanity had no idea what was happening. People started to panic, but it was too late. The invaders had already begun their work. The streets of major cities, once bustling with life, were now deserted or filled with the clatter of alien technology as it took control of all systems. Governments scrambled to react, but nothing worked. The communication systems were locked down, and military forces around the world were confused, unsure of what to do. The invaders seemed to know exactly how to disable human technology, how to infiltrate their defenses without making a sound. But amid the chaos, something unexpected happened. A small group of human engineers, working in a nondescript building in a suburban town, noticed something strange. A glitch in a satellite system. It wasn't a big problem, just a flicker on the screens, a brief pause in the transmission. But these engineers had been working on satellite communications for years, and they recognized that this small glitch could be more than just an accident. It was the first crack in the invaders' perfect plan. At first, they tried to ignore it, thinking it was nothing more than a minor technical issue. But the glitch continued to occur. A few minutes later, the glitch spread to other satellites, then to ground stations, then to other forms of communication. It was as if something was intentionally interfering with the systems, but there was no obvious explanation. The engineers couldn't help but investigate further. As they dug deeper, they realized that the invaders, with all their advanced technology, had overlooked something that no one else had: the outdated, underpowered systems humanity had been using for decades. It was a small but critical mistake. The alien ships had assumed that humanity's technology was so primitive, so outdated, that it would pose no threat. They had no idea that Earth's most basic systems, ones the aliens had completely overlooked, could still cause problems. The engineers worked together, using their skills to trace the glitch back to its source. They discovered that a signal from one of Earth's oldest satellites, still in operation, had somehow interfered with the alien communication system. It was as though the invaders' advanced systems were not compatible with the older tech humans still relied on. For the first time since the invasion began, the humans had gained an advantage. It was a small one, but it was something. The alien forces, at first unaware of what had happened, continued their invasion, trying to regain control over the global communications networks. But the glitch kept spreading. The invaders were confused, trying to track down the source of the disruption, but it was too late. The damage had been done. The glitch didn't just disrupt communications, it gave humans their first real insight into the invaders' weaknesses. The aliens were technologically superior in many ways, but they were also vulnerable in others. The glitch, which seemed like a minor inconvenience at first, had turned into a potential weapon. It gave the human engineers enough time to begin to understand the alien systems, to figure out how they worked and where they were most vulnerable. Meanwhile, the alien ships on the ground were preparing to make their next move. They had taken over key military and governmental infrastructure, but they needed to break the human spirit. They knew that if they could destroy Earth's will to resist, the war would be over before it even truly began. But the longer they were on Earth, the more they underestimated humanity. They thought humans were weak, powerless, and incapable of fighting back. They didn't realize that the people of Earth had something more valuable than advanced weapons. They had ingenuity, resilience, and the will to fight for their survival. Humanity was beginning to show the first signs of resistance. The glitch had given them a crack in the armor of the invaders, and they weren't about to let that chance slip away. The engineers continued to work, studying the alien systems and improving their methods of disruption. The resistance began to form. It wasn't much yet, just small pockets of humans working in secret, communicating through stolen frequencies, trying to find a way to turn the tide. But they were learning quickly, and as the invaders struggled to regain control, they had no idea that the humans were preparing for something much bigger. As the alien forces grew more desperate, they began to make mistakes. They miscalculated, thinking the Earth's population would be easy to subjugate. They didn't realize that humanity had the one thing that could not be defeated: a relentless will to fight, no matter the odds. In those quiet moments when it seemed like all hope was lost, humanity proved that no matter how advanced the enemy was, they could still fight back, and they could use whatever tools they had to do it. The silent invasion had begun, but the humans had started their own battle. The fight for Earth was far from over, and the invaders, still unaware of what they were facing, were about to learn a lesson that would change everything. They had thought Earth's technology was primitive, its people weak, but the humans were far from powerless, and the true fight had only just begun. As the days passed, the invasion grew more intense. The invaders' forces tightened their grip on Earth, securing key locations and establishing their control over cities, military bases, and communications networks. Despite their superior technology, they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated the tenacity of humanity. What the invaders didn't know was that while they were distracted by their advanced weaponry and strategies, the humans were doing something they hadn't counted on. They were learning, adapting, and using their very limitations to their advantage. The small team of engineers who had discovered the glitch in the alien communications system became the nucleus of a resistance. They worked tirelessly, often through the night, poring over the data they had collected from their brief success. The glitch, which had seemed like a minor technical problem at first, was now something much more. The engineers realized that the older, underpowered technology that humanity relied on had one advantage the aliens hadn't considered: it was unpredictable. While the invaders' technology was highly efficient, it was also rigid and controlled. The humans, on the other hand, had systems that were messy, error-prone, and inconsistent. Exactly the kind of thing that the aliens couldn't plan for. Using this insight, the humans began to turn the tables. They quickly adapted the glitch into a series of hacks that began to affect more and more of the alien systems. Every time the aliens tried to shut down the disruption, the humans found a new way to break through. They began to use Earth's old satellites, outdated communication networks, and even basic tools like old radios and mechanical devices to bypass the aliens' high-tech security. To the invaders, this was a nightmare. They had no explanation for why their advanced systems were failing, and they couldn't keep up with the humans' constant ingenuity. In a hidden underground facility, the engineers worked alongside military strategists to come up with a plan. Their goal was simple: to find a way to disrupt the invaders' hold on Earth and give humanity a fighting chance. They knew they couldn't hope to defeat the invaders head-on. Not yet, anyway. But they could create chaos, confuse their enemies, and delay their progress long enough for humanity to mount a real resistance. Every day, they discovered new weaknesses in the alien systems, learning how to exploit them. They realized that the invaders were so reliant on their technology that they had neglected one crucial factor: the unpredictability of human nature. At the same time, news of the invasion spread across the world. In cities and towns, people who had once lived in peace began to rise up. Small groups of civilians banded together, forming underground cells of resistance fighters. Some were former soldiers who had been caught off guard by the initial invasion. Others were ordinary citizens who had nothing more than their wits and determination to fight back. They armed themselves with whatever they could find: old firearms, homemade explosives, and even improvised weapons like knives, sticks, and rocks. But what they lacked in weaponry, they made up for with their sheer willpower and resolve. One particularly brave resistance group managed to infiltrate a local alien stronghold. They didn't have advanced technology or military-grade equipment, but they had something just as powerful: the element of surprise. Under the cover of darkness, they launched a daring raid on one of the invaders' communication hubs. The operation was risky. There was little chance they would succeed. But they had no choice. The humans knew that every small victory, no matter how insignificant it seemed, was another step toward pushing the invaders off their planet. The raid didn't go exactly as planned. They didn't manage to destroy the alien technology, but they did something just as valuable. They sent a message. They stole crucial data from the invaders' network, enough to learn more about their vulnerabilities. They sabotaged their supply lines, slowing the aliens' progress and buying the resistance more time. The invaders, used to controlling everything with their advanced technology, had never expected such a bold, unpredictable attack from humans. For the first time since the invasion began, they were forced to rethink their strategies. While the resistance fighters continued their skirmishes, the small group of engineers who had first discovered the glitch worked day and night, making breakthroughs that nobody thought possible. They managed to reverse engineer some of the alien tech they had captured, using it to create makeshift weapons. The engineers learned that the key to defeating the invaders wasn't brute strength. It was adapting their technology and using it in ways the aliens never thought possible. With each new discovery, humanity grew bolder. They were no longer fighting on the defensive. They were taking the fight to the invaders. As the resistance continued to gain ground, the invaders became increasingly frustrated. They had expected an easy victory, but what they found instead was a determined and resourceful enemy. They had underestimated humanity's adaptability, and now it was starting to show. The humans' ability to turn even the most basic tools into weapons had become their greatest strength. Every day, the humans found new ways to disrupt the invaders' systems, and every small victory added to their confidence. But the aliens were not giving up. They began to launch counterattacks, sending in more reinforcements, and deploying stronger weapons. They targeted human strongholds, trying to break the resistance once and for all. But each attack was met with fierce opposition. The humans, though outgunned and outmatched, fought with everything they had. The resistance had become a symbol of defiance, showing the aliens that no matter how advanced their technology, they could never break the human spirit. Meanwhile, the leaders of the alien forces were becoming increasingly desperate. They knew that if they didn't regain control soon, the humans would have the chance to regroup and launch a full-scale counteroffensive. But they were still caught in the web of disruptions caused by the humans' resourcefulness. They could not understand why their technology was failing, and their frustration was beginning to show. For the first time, The invaders were beginning to fear what they had once thought was a primitive species. In the midst of all this chaos, a new plan began to take shape. The humans, guided by the engineers' breakthroughs and the success of their guerrilla tactics, were preparing for a larger assault. The resistance fighters, now growing in number and strength, were ready to unite their forces. The invaders, despite their overwhelming advantage in technology and numbers, had underestimated the most powerful weapon humanity possessed: their determination to survive. The battle was far from over, but humanity had already proven that it was capable of far more than anyone had thought. Against all odds, humans were turning the tide, showing that no matter how superior the enemy, nothing could break their will to fight for their home. The invaders were about to learn the hard way that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology. It was their relentless desire to protect what was theirs. The resistance was just beginning, and the invaders were in for a fight they never imagined. The situation was rapidly escalating. The invaders, once confident in their superior technology, were now scrambling to maintain their foothold on Earth. As the resistance gained momentum, more and more pockets of humanity began to rise up, emboldened by the success of the first raids. What had started as a handful of engineers and a few brave resistance fighters was quickly becoming a global movement. The alien forces, still reeling from the unexpected disruptions in their communications and technology, were no longer in control. The humans had managed to turn their weakness into their greatest strength: improvisation. In cities across the globe, small bands of resistance fighters were popping up like wildfire. They didn't have the sophisticated weapons or advanced tools the aliens wielded, but they had something more dangerous: creativity and determination. The humans used every possible method to fight back. They hacked into alien supply lines, took over communication networks, and sabotaged alien vehicles using whatever they could get their hands on. They used anything they could find: old military equipment, even basic tools like hammers and makeshift explosives, to strike fear into the invaders. The resistance fighters were constantly on the move, hitting the invaders where it hurt, and then vanishing into the shadows before the aliens could retaliate. In one daring attack, a group of resistance fighters managed to capture an alien drone and reverse engineer its control system. Using the drone, they launched a surprise strike against an alien command center, destroying it in a fiery explosion. The aliens had never seen anything like it. They had assumed that humanity was weak, disorganized, and technologically inferior. But the humans were proving that they could outthink and outmaneuver their attackers. Meanwhile, the engineers who had first discovered the glitch in the alien communications network continued to make progress. They developed new ways to manipulate the alien systems, using their knowledge of human technology to exploit the aliens' reliance on advanced, but rigid, machinery. The more the engineers learned, the more effective their tactics became. They started to develop their own weapons, using stolen alien technology to create makeshift bombs, EMP devices, and even energy-based weapons. Though these weapons were rudimentary compared to the invaders' advanced arsenals, they were effective in disrupting the aliens' operations. One of the most impressive breakthroughs came when the engineers discovered how to use the aliens' own power supply against them. The invaders had set up a vast energy grid that powered their technology, but the humans managed to tap into it and disrupt the power flow. This small act of sabotage sent a shockwave through the alien ranks. The invaders' ships, weapons, and communication systems began to malfunction, giving the humans a crucial advantage. The aliens were no longer in control of the battlefield, and the resistance fighters could strike without fear of immediate retaliation. The invaders, realizing they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before, began to change their tactics. They sent in more reinforcements, bringing in more powerful weapons and advanced technology in an attempt to crush the human resistance. But the more they advanced, the more the humans fought back. Every new weapon the invaders brought with them was met with an even more creative solution from the resistance. The humans didn't need the most advanced technology. They only needed the determination to keep fighting. As the resistance grew in strength, The world began to unite. Nations that had once been divided by borders and conflicts were now working together. The enemy, the invader, was the common enemy that all of humanity could agree on. It wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a fight to protect the future of Earth, to preserve everything that made humanity unique. People from all walks of life, engineers, soldiers, farmers, scientists, and students, came together to defend their planet. One of the most significant victories came when a group of resistance fighters, using nothing but stolen alien technology and old military equipment, managed to take down an entire alien warship. The ship had been one of the invaders' most powerful weapons, and its destruction sent a powerful message. The humans weren't just surviving, they were thriving. They were learning from their mistakes, adapting, and finding ways to turn the aliens' own technology against them. The aliens, realizing that they could no longer rely on their superior firepower alone, began to retreat from key locations. They had underestimated the resourcefulness and resolve of humanity. Their tactics had been flawed from the beginning. They had seen humans as weak and primitive, but they were quickly learning that Earth's inhabitants were far more dangerous than they had imagined. As the Resistance's victories mounted, the world's leaders began to coordinate a global counteroffensive. The human forces were no longer a scattered group of rebels. They were a united front, fighting with a singular purpose. The world's military leaders had come together to form a strategic plan to reclaim Earth from the invaders. The resistance fighters, now more experienced and better equipped, began to strike with precision, taking back cities and territories that had once fallen to the alien invaders. But the aliens weren't going to give up so easily. They launched a final desperate assault on Earth's remaining defenses. It was a do-or-die situation for the invaders. They knew that if they didn't crush the resistance once and for all, they would lose everything. They deployed their most advanced warships and weapons, intending to wipe out the remaining human forces in a single decisive strike. But the humans, prepared for this final push, were ready. They had learned from every battle, every skirmish, and every victory. Using the knowledge they had gained from their past encounters with the aliens, they launched a counterattack that would go down in history. The resistance fighters, alongside the world's military forces, fought with everything they had. They deployed the most powerful weapons humanity had ever created, including modified alien technology and newly developed weapons based on their previous successes. The battle raged for days. It was intense, with every side giving their all. But in the end, it was the humans' unyielding determination that won the day. The invaders, though powerful, could not break the spirit of Earth's people. The last of their warships was destroyed, and their remaining forces were forced to retreat. Humanity had won. It wasn't just a victory over a superior enemy. It was a victory that proved something far more important, that no matter how advanced an enemy might be, no matter how strong or technologically advanced they are, humanity's true strength lies in its adaptability, creativity, and willpower. The aliens had thought they could crush humanity with ease, but they had underestimated the one thing no alien technology could defeat: the human spirit. And with that spirit, humanity had won their greatest victory. The fight was over, and Earth was free once again. The victory was not just a triumph of strategy, but a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit. The alien invaders, now in full retreat, were left stunned by what they had encountered. They had come to Earth with a sense of superiority, certain that their advanced technology would easily subdue what they considered a primitive species. But they had underestimated one critical factor: humans' ability to adapt, improvise, and turn any situation to their advantage. In the end, it was not technology or brute force that won the war. It was the human will to survive. As the last of the alien ships fled Earth's atmosphere, the people of the planet stood victorious. But the cost was immense. The world had been ravaged by the invasion. Cities lay in ruins, and many lives had been lost in the battle. Yet there was an undeniable sense of pride and unity among the survivors. People who had once been strangers, divided by borders and politics, now saw each other as brothers and sisters, bound by a common cause. The invaders had made one fatal mistake. They had assumed that humanity's differences were weaknesses, but in reality, it was those differences that had made humanity strong. It was their creativity, their ability to think outside the box, that had turned the tide of the war. The resistance fighters, those brave men and women who had fought in the trenches, were hailed as heroes. Their names were remembered for generations, and their sacrifices were honored. The engineers who had cracked the alien systems, turning their technology against them, were celebrated as the masterminds behind the victory. They had taken the tools of the invaders and used them to weaken their hold on Earth. The scientists who had studied the alien technology and adapted it for human use were acknowledged for their brilliance. And of course, the everyday people, farmers, teachers, students who had picked up arms and joined the fight, were hailed as the heart of humanity's resistance. In the aftermath of the war, Earth began to rebuild. Cities that had once been shattered by alien bombardments now slowly rose from the ashes. Reconstruction was slow and painful, but the people of Earth worked together to restore what had been lost. Governments, once divided by politics, now cooperated to ensure the planet's future was secure. The lessons learned during the invasion were not forgotten. The world's leaders understood that they could no longer afford to be divided or complacent. The human race had faced its greatest threat and emerged victorious. But that victory came at a price. As Earth rebuilt, the alien invaders were not entirely gone. Some of their forces had been captured, their technology studied, and a select few were held in captivity. While the war was over, the questions about their invasion lingered. Why had they come to Earth in the first place? Were they the last of their kind? Or were more invaders waiting somewhere in the universe? These questions haunted the people who had survived, but they also inspired a new era of exploration. The victory over the invaders had sparked a renewed interest in space exploration and the unknown. Humanity, now united, was ready to venture beyond Earth and explore the stars. It had learned that it was not as weak and vulnerable as it had once thought. The universe was vast and filled with unknown dangers, but humans had proven they could face those dangers head-on. Meanwhile, the surviving aliens, those who had been left behind during their retreat, were being questioned. The humans needed answers. The invaders had their own stories, their own reasons for coming to Earth, and humanity needed to understand them. Perhaps there was more to the story than the aliens' first assault revealed. Some believe the aliens had been seeking something on Earth, resources, perhaps, or a new home for their people. Others speculated that the invasion was part of a larger intergalactic war. Whatever the truth, humanity knew one thing for certain: the alien invaders would never return, and Earth would never again be vulnerable to such an attack. As the survivors looked to the future, they understood that they would always have to be vigilant. The universe was vast, and the aliens they had faced were not the only threat humanity might encounter. But the victory had proved that humans were more than capable of defending their world. They were no longer a species that relied solely on advanced technology. They had learned to use their strengths, their creativity, and their ability to adapt to survive. Humanity had not only won the war, it had proven to the universe that it would never again be the underdog. Earth was now a symbol of hope, of resilience, and of the indomitable human spirit. The invaders had come thinking they were superior, but in the end, it was humanity's strength, not their technology, that had won the day. The war was over, but the story of humanity's survival was just beginning. As they rebuilt their world, humanity would take the lessons learned from this great conflict and apply them to every challenge they would face in the future. The universe was still full of unknowns, but humanity now stood ready to face whatever came next. Because, as the invaders had learned too late, when humans were pushed to the brink, they would always fight back, and they would always win. The years following the defeat of the alien invaders were marked by an unprecedented era of human innovation and cooperation. Earth was no longer a fragile, isolated planet in the vast expanse of space. It had become a symbol of resilience, a beacon of hope for other civilizations, that might one day face similar threats. Humanity's victory had not only saved Earth, but had also given it a new sense of purpose and direction. The global unity that had emerged from the ashes of war did not fade. The world's nations, once fragmented by political divisions, now worked together in unprecedented harmony. The need to rebuild and secure Earth's future had forced humanity to put aside old grudges and focus on the greater good. Governments collaborated on reconstruction efforts, pooling resources and knowledge to restore the planet to its former glory. The lessons of the war had taught humanity the importance of unity, and it became clear that the only way forward was together. The success of the human resistance against the alien invaders had forever changed the way Earth viewed its place in the universe. No longer did humanity see itself as a vulnerable, untested species. They had proven their worth, showing that with determination, creativity, and unity, they could face even the most formidable threats. As a result, Earth began to take its first steps toward becoming a spacefaring civilization. The knowledge gleaned from the defeated invaders was invaluable. The captured alien technology and the reverse-engineered weapons provided humans with new insights into space travel, energy production, and advanced weaponry. These discoveries allowed humanity to build the first interstellar ships capable of reaching beyond the confines of the solar system. Space exploration, which had once been a distant dream, now became a reality. The same ingenuity and resourcefulness that had driven humanity to victory against the invaders propelled them forward into the cosmos. The first missions to neighboring planets and moons were launched in a spirit of exploration and cooperation. Scientists, engineers, and explorers from all over the world worked together to uncover the mysteries of the solar system. New colonies were established on the Moon, Mars, and beyond, serving as stepping stones for further exploration. The alien threat had taught humanity that the universe was vast and full of unknown dangers, but it had also shown them that they were capable of overcoming those challenges. Despite the advances in technology, humanity's spirit remained unchanged. The lessons of the war against the invaders were never forgotten. Humans continued to value adaptability, ingenuity, and perseverance above all else. The same resourcefulness that had allowed them to turn alien technology against its creators was applied to new challenges. Whether it was building sustainable colonies on distant worlds or developing new methods for peacekeeping in a growing interstellar society, humanity's greatest strength lay in its ability to think creatively and adapt to ever-changing circumstances. While Earth enjoyed a period of peace and prosperity, there were still those who wondered about the greater universe. The defeat of the alien invaders had been a victory for humanity, but it was also a wake-up call. There were many questions left unanswered. What had driven the invaders to attack Earth? Were they part of a larger galactic empire, or had they been rogue agents acting on their own? What else lay beyond the stars, and what other civilizations might humans encounter? These questions, though unanswered, inspired the next generation of explorers and scientists. The victory over the invaders had given humanity the confidence to reach for the stars, but it also reminded them of the need for caution. The universe was full of unknowns, and humanity now had the means to venture into it. But the same determination and adaptability that had won the war would be necessary in navigating the uncharted territories ahead. The future was uncertain, but humanity faced it with the same resolve that had carried them through the darkest days of the invasion. The final chapter of the war marked the beginning of humanity's greatest journey. Earth was no longer just a planet in the vast cosmos. It was the center of an expanding human civilization that would soon make its mark on the stars. Earth had shown the universe that no matter how advanced an enemy may be, humanity would always find a way to survive and thrive. The aliens had underestimated the human spirit, and it was that spirit that would guide humanity as it reached out into the unknown, determined to prove that nothing was impossible. As humanity prepared to face the challenges of interstellar exploration, one truth stood above all others. Earth had been tested and had emerged victorious. No longer would humanity be seen as weak or insignificant. They had proved that they could stand against the greatest threats the universe had to offer, and that they would do whatever it took to protect their world and their future. The universe was vast, but the humans had shown that they were not just survivors. They were conquerors. And as long as their spirit endured, there was no challenge too great, no frontier too distant, and no enemy too powerful to defeat. The stars beckoned, and humanity, unbowed and unbroken, was ready to answer their call.